Truth is, the new Russian general Surovikin is waging a terrible war of attrition on Ukraine's energy sector, but also on Ukrainian anti-air defenses in preparation of a brutal winter offensive. Hello my friends and welcome to History Legends. Here are the latest news about the Russo-Ukrainian war. Only with the 5 latest Russian missile attacks since October, Russia has launched more than 300 Kh-55 caliber or Iskander missiles. Very strange. Considering that since the beginning of the war, Western experts have predicted that Russia would run short of missiles. On March 27th, French military analyst Michel Goya estimated Russia's stockpile at 1,500 missiles. Yet, in early August, 5 months into the war, Reuters reported that Russia had fired more than 3,650 missiles and rockets, more than double those of Western estimations. And now, can I get a drum roll? Zelensky claimed that Russia had fired more than 4,700 missiles since the Russian invasion. This represents 3 times Russia's arsenal. Someone please tell me who provided this information. Some people explain this by saying that North Korea has been secretly shipping rockets to Russia in a series of dubious claims. But the media kept on going. On the 18th of October, Politico said Russia is running short of long-range missiles, say Western officials. Yet, according to the Glorious Institute of the Study of War, only 1 month later, on November 15th, Russian forces conducted the largest missile strike since the start of the war. And the same day of this massive attack, the Kyiv Independent replied, you know the song, missile shortage hampers further Russian strikes. And 2 days later, on November 17th, Russia launched yet another wave of 5 airstrikes and 25 cruise missiles on Ukrainian infrastructure facilities, on top of the ones they fire on a daily basis. The only one that was honest was Mark F. Kantian, a former Marine and White House weapons strategist. He said, I quote, few, if any, Western officials have a clear account of the status of Russia's arsenal or know precisely how many missiles remain in its stockpile. Thank you! Thank you! That's intellectual honesty. In this video, you'll discover why Russia is so invested in destroying Ukraine's energy sector, if Russia can achieve its goals, and if it's all part of some preparation for an upcoming Russian winter offensive. Remember that if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe and check out my Ukraine playlist so you don't miss anything I've said in the past. And as you know, just like with other commentators, some of my Ukraine videos have been targeted with limited or no ads. So make sure to check out my PayPal or Patreon to keep the show running. Thank you to everyone that has already helped, and welcome to the headquarters. Logistics. In April, when Russia abandoned hope of a quick victory, the Kremlin changed course and began targeting all sorts of targets: electrical substations, fuel depots, train stations, and Ukraine's railway network. Like I mentioned in many of my previous videos, Ukrainian trains were particularly annoying for the Russians, since they would transport tons of ammunition and thousands of military equipment all the way from Poland to the front. But not only that, using trains, Ukraine also managed to bring thousands of reinforcements from one sector to another to stop any Russian breakthrough attempt. Problem is, Ukraine has almost 25,000 kilometers of tracks. The Russians couldn't handle that size, to the extent where launching missile strikes on train tracks did not prove to be cost effective. Russia would fire a missile worth multiple millions of dollars on train tracks that could be repaired in a matter of a couple hours at a very low cost in terms of equipment, just for a few $1,000. And this was possible thanks to Ukraine's secret army, the 230,000 employees of Ukraine's railway services. After this failed attempt, Russia started to target electrical substations that power all of Ukraine's electrified railways. But once again, the damage was only temporary. Here you can see a photograph of the aftermath of a substation after it was struck by a Russian missile. For example, at one point, Russian missiles hit 5 electrical substations in the west of Ukraine. Only 19 trains were temporarily suspended. In June, Russian missiles struck routes in the Carpathian Mountains. 15 trains were delayed for up to 10 hours. In the end, Ukraine's electrical substation network proved to be extremely resilient, perhaps thanks to Soviet engineering. I'm not the greatest expert in this topic, so correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially these substations form some sort of node network. The moment one node shuts down, the current finds another path. Just like when you're using Google Maps and there's a road closure, the system will find you another way to reroute you towards your destination. Long story short, after the appointment of General Surovikin in October, Russia changed its missile strategy in Ukraine. With this new plan, Surovikin is trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Or rather, 3 birds. As you know, 3 is always more fun. You see, to stop trains from moving, Russia needs to take down electric substations. The problem is how to take down these electric substations. One way, of course, is to keep firing at them over and over. For example, the Zhytomyr 330 power substation was first hit on October 18th by a missile strike, but then again on November 15th, possibly to hit the remaining surviving auto transformers. No, not those kind of transformers. Although this process is effective, it's very costly and takes a lot of time. So Surovikin decided to take a drastic step. Cut off all Ukraine from electricity by targeting all the country's energetical infrastructure. 90% of the latest Russian strikes were targeted at the energy sector. And what makes things even worse is that this campaign was started at the beginning of winter, a period where energy demand is even higher. Here's a map from energycharter.org that shows Russian strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. I'll link it in the description below. But what I want you to pay attention to is this huge bump in October, but also pay attention at how all these power plants are related and connected to one another. For example, here you can see a picture of the latest Russian strikes on the 1800 megawatt Tripolskaya thermal power plant. According to the report from Energy Charter, this is one in only 9 that are still in Ukrainian control. And this one is mainly responsible to power the city of Kyiv. If we take a closer look, neither the switchyard itself nor the 2 auto transformers located within the station were affected. According to a report, a couple step-up transformers were damaged, as well as both incoming and outgoing conductors. Analysts estimate that the power generation capacity of this thermal power plant has now been reduced by 1/3. Then we can also see 2 demolished buildings on the edge of the fuel oil terminal of the power plant that were most likely destroyed due to a miss on the main target. So you see, it's not that easy to take down or completely destroy such an infrastructure. However, due to this continuous Russian missile campaign, Zelensky admitted that 30 to 40% of Ukraine's energy facilities have been put out of operation. But like we have seen with the missiles in Poland incident, we even have to take with a pinch of salt the words of the president of Ukraine. So the damage of Russian missile strikes could be much higher than publicly declared. Now that was bird 1. Now for bird number 2. The problem is that without electricity, how can Ukrainian military facilities function? It's not the end, they can survive with generators, but these require lots of fuel or gas. But as you can imagine, the Russians also targeted fuel facilities, to the extent where Ukraine now has to import most of the fuel it needs. Once again, using Ukraine's rail network. At the same time, Russian strikes have also directly targeted Ukrainian military industrial complex facilities that manufacture or repair military equipment, like the Yuzhmash enterprise in Dnipro, specialized in rockets, or the Motor-Sich plant in Zaporozhye. And the destruction of Ukraine's military factories could explain the following footage. Here you can see an abandoned convoy of Ukrainian T-64A tanks near Kherson. Apparently these were taken out from storage. I don't know exactly why these were abandoned, but we can speculate that it is because of maintenance problems. There were no more spare parts available, or they were cannibalized for the more modern T-64BV. Bird number 3 is to gain aerial superiority. to properly support the upcoming winter ground offensive. It seems that the Russians are trying to overwhelm the Ukrainian air defense systems, forcing them to waste ammunition and trying to destroy as many aircraft and air defense units as possible in the process. All in all, the Russian decision to attack Ukrainian air defense positions seems rational, since the West will have a hard time replacing disabled systems in a timely manner, without even talking about the training of all these crews. But that's another story. But perhaps there's no need to worry. As we've seen, the Ukrainian government claims that 40% of its energy sector is out, but at the same time they claim that during the huge wave of missile attacks on November 15th, that at least 70 missiles and 10 drones were taken down by Ukrainian air defense. Those are two contradictory statements. Actually, the Ukrainian Air Force claims they shot down 77 out of 96 Russian missiles. Ukrainian air defense is so good that sometimes they shoot down even more missiles than what the Russians had even fired. But just like journalist Julian Röpke said, we can easily divide Ukrainian claims by a factor of 5 to 10. If Ukrainian anti-air missiles are so effective, how come 2 of those missiles failed to intercept 1 Russian missile on Lviv, and then these Ukrainian missiles ended up on a Polish farm? This scenario is most likely not an exception. If you're an expert in anti-air defense, let me know in the comment section, but perhaps it's because they use old equipment, or simply because Ukrainian anti-air defense crews have been under so much pressure lately that they're on the brink of a breakdown. But all this falls into the Russian strategy. The more the Ukrainians use their anti-air defense systems, the more the Russians can spot them and destroy them. You see, to be effective, air defense systems have to enable radars. As a result, both of them become accessible targets whenever they are in use. This means that during cruise missile salvos, Russian Air Force pinpoints Ukrainian positions, and then Russian fighter jets with long-range air-to-air missiles lift into the air. Together with loitering munitions, they can target enemy air defense positions and radars. And Surovikin's strategy seems to be bearing fruit. In the very first days of these massive strikes, Ukraine lost 3 fighter jets in the Poltava region, and one of them was destroyed because of an explosion of an Iranian-made Shahed drone. In addition, the fact that the Russians mix cruise missiles and cheap drones means that the Ukraine military is forced to waste its already scarce Soviet-made air defense ammunition. It's a war of attrition. I don't know how long Ukraine's air defense can resist at this rate. But NATO, the West, seems to be worried. So they immediately sent them new weapons. Before I tell you exactly which ones, a quick word from today's sponsor. A war like this one has ripple effects on the entire world. Along with oil prices, some of the most popular food products are more expensive due to inflation. Milk, eggs, butter, cheese. Their prices have surged over 20% in a few months. It would be one thing if these were the only problems we had to worry about, but most experts think things are going to get worse. A few years ago, you may have relied on savings and investments to stop the bleeding, but the traditional 60-40 stock bond portfolio is down 34% this year. So where can the average person go in chaotic times like this? Historically, physical assets like real estate and gold have withstood inflation and economic downturns, but rising mortgage rates have sent the housing market into a spiral. And gold is more stable, yet may not be showing much price appreciation as of late. Lucky for us. There's another option that could help protect us from more losses. A historically valuable alternative asset with a near zero correlation to stocks and bonds. It's fine art. With our sponsor, Masterworks, you can invest in museum-grade contemporary art for a fraction of the cost. I know what you're thinking. It's not digital art. It's not an overpriced blinged-out JPEG. These pieces are the real deal. You might have not realized this. But over the last 26 years, contemporary art prices outpaced the S&P 500 by 131%. With almost every market taking on huge losses this year, and inflation still at historic levels, investors need some more growth potential. In the last 3 exits, Masterworks has delivered net returns of 17.8%, 21.5%, and 33.1% to their investors. And they're just getting started. Over 550,000 members have signed up so far, and offerings have sold out in a matter of minutes. But my subscribers can get priority access with the link in the description. Sign up now for Masterworks at masterworks.art/HistoryLegends. The link is in the description. Help from the West. The Pentagon sent to Ukraine 2 NASAM batteries. A NASAM's battery consists of an MPQ-64 Sentinel surveillance radar and 3 launchers armed with 6 missiles apiece. It's a Cold War system that uses inexpensive missiles. And apparently there's a lot of ammunition available in Europe. Then there is the Avenger, which is basically a Humvee with a rotating turret with 4 Stinger missiles. This one, as you can imagine, is very affordable, but it only has a range of 3 miles and it has no radar. Meanwhile, Spain is sending an Italian-made Aspide battery to Ukraine that has a range of 15.5 miles. And Ukraine has already received the first out of 4 German Iris-T short-range anti-aircraft missile systems. Germany is also sending 50 Gepard self-propelled anti-aircraft guns to Ukraine. But I'm not sure these can stop caliber missiles. They can maybe do something against drones.
Or you need something like air-bursting ammunition. So this is one of the reasons why the German Gepard is very effective against them, because it has air-bursting 30mm ammunition and the radar will track it.
Talking about drones. Oh yeah, almost forgot. After his visit to Ukraine on November 19th, UK Prime Minister Sunak pledged 120 anti-aircraft guns and radar stations. With such an immediate need for foreign air defense systems, we can believe that due to battle attrition, the bulk of Ukraine's Soviet-era Buk M1, Tor, Osa, Strela 1, and Togunska systems have been destroyed. Iran to the rescue. Remember how in the early days of the conflict, Ukraine had a massive advantage regarding drones. The Russians did the imitation game and stepped up their drone production. Ukraine's reported that the Russians made great use of Iranian-made Shahed UAVs, which are called Geran-2 in Russian service. According to Kiev, Russia has ordered between 2,000 and 2,400 drones from Iran. Although the Geran-2 is a loitering munition, a kamikaze drone, you have to see it like a smaller, slower ballistic missile. They're not high-tech, it's a simple fire and forget. You program it and it's self-guiding. But that also means you don't need a trained operator. The Geran-2 also have a crazy range of 1,500 to 2,000 kilometers, and it can carry a warhead of 40 kilograms. Agreed, it's 10 times less than a caliber missile, but they're also hundreds of times cheaper to produce, meaning that they're perfect to destroy soft targets like substations, but they can also be used to fool Ukraine anti-air defense and push them to exhaust their anti-air missile stockpiles. Russia is also actively using homemade kamikaze drones known as the Lancets. Compared to the Geran-2, they only have a range of 40 kilometers and a payload of 3 kilograms. Since they're easy to operate, more and more videos of Lancet strikes began to be actively published starting October 13th. In the past month, 60 videos were released compared to 6 since the beginning of the war. The number one target for the Lancets are howitzers. Out of 17 M777 targeted, 12 were complete write-offs, destroyed. Meanwhile, the Lancets have proved completely ineffective against tanks. And that's another thing, it's not because you see a drone strike on a vehicle that the vehicle is automatically destroyed. General Armageddon. In the end, General Surovikin uses a systematic approach to paralyze the Ukrainian military. On a tactical level, Russian forces use small and cheap kamikaze drones to harass and destroy enemy howitzers and vehicles. On an operational level, they use Iranian-made Geran-2 to target the transmission system operator's dispatching center, aiming to destroy the command and control center of the Ukrainian power system. And on a strategic level, they use cruise missiles to destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Time will tell what will be the effect of this missile campaign. But more and more Western analysts have admitted that the enemy general, Surovikin, is very competent. Now there's a nightmare scenario that I wanted to bring up. Apart from Kherson, there are about 24 bridges or dams across the Dnieper. What if the Russians launched a systematic bombing campaign to destroy all of them? It's easier said than done. Here's a footage of a Russian missile targeting the Amur bridge in Dnipro. And from the video, we can barely see any damage to the structure. Perhaps the Russians wanted to do this in the early days, but simply saw that it was not cost effective. But let's say Ukraine's anti-air defense is knocked out or crippled. Could it then become a possibility? The question is not if the Russians can target these bridges. We know they can. The question becomes, how many missiles would be necessary? 200? 300? 500? If all these bridges are destroyed, 500,000 Ukrainian soldiers would be isolated on the East Bank. How would they then get supplied? And on top of that, curiously, it was reported that the Russians have regularly bombed targets in the Zaporozhye, Dnipro, and Pavlograd triangle. Among the targets were railway infrastructure. So we can bet that in this sector, things will get hot this winter. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support this channel, make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal. The links are in the description.